Thank you, DJ. Thank you. She'll be monitoring the chat. So if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in there. We've got a questions section at the end. But if there's something that needs interrupting, she will have no problem interrupting us, just like I had no problem interrupting her. We're all friends here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Roman and I are going to share the load of this talk. We've got two slightly different opinions on this one, which I think is a good thing. And it's a new topic. And we're going to talk to you about the idea of a product coach. We're going to talk to you about what the product coach is. We've both got different views on what that is. Why the product coach is potentially an important role, why you might be interested in it, or why you potentially should be interested in it, and who could be interested in this. Let's assume for a minute that ChatGPT is not going to take over all of our jobs and some of us will have something to do in the future. Then who might be interested in this particular role and why? And if you are interested, how you might be able to get from where you are to be a product coach. So those are the four things we're going to cover. Questions in the chat. We've got some time at the end and we'll cover as many as we can. So, two things that we're going to look at. I'm not going to introduce them in detail, but we're going to look at the idea of a product coach. First of all, Roman's going to talk to us about his view about a product coach, and I'm going to talk to you about a coach of product people and how they might be two similar things. They might be two very different things. So, Roman, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. So, product coach. I don't know how this is for you, but I think there's been an increasing interest in, should I say, the community, the coaching, agile, and the product management communities around the concept, the notion of working as a product coach. And so Geoff and I, we sat down and we tried to, capture what we think a product coach is. And, for me, certainly a product coach is somebody who has a deep understanding of product management. So, things around product discovery and product strategy, maybe the product lifecycle model, being able to create and validate a strategy and then evolve that strategy across the product lifecycle, working with product roadmaps, aligning product roadmaps to strategies and the product backlog, maybe knowing a little bit about business modeling, financial forecasting, prioritization, and of course, backlog management. So, for me, that is really a very important part of being an effective product coach. You could say it's an enabler, or in a way, it's a prerequisite. So strong, in-depth product management knowledge. And then the second element that I feel is helpful to succeed as a product coach is to understand the specific industry or domain. My experience suggests that it is a difference if you work, say, in finance or healthcare or telco, or in a different sector, in retail. And so I think it's helpful to have some knowledge of the industry, some knowledge of the domain, and understand what are some major trends, what product categories do exist. And when I talk about trends, I mean consumer trends, I mean technology trends, relevant regulatory trends, who are the main competitors, and what are the standout features of their products. So again, just have the relevant expertise for the appropriate industry or the domain. And then I don't know, if you agree with this, but for me, it's very important to have product management hands-on experience in order to be able to help others and coach others, help others improve as product people and do a better job. And so ideally, somebody who works as a product coach has been or has worked as a product manager themselves and managed a product, but ideally not only a single product, but maybe several products, maybe a smaller product, maybe a bigger product, and maybe also ideally not only in one company, but in several companies. The reason is that I find, and this is true for me as well, and based on my own experience, that if you work on one product or you manage one product successfully, then that is great. But there's the danger that you then have a copy and paste approach. I find that you think like, oh yeah, that's worked so well, let's do it. Let's do exactly the same thing and in a way replicate the same approach recommend that for a client or another organization. And yeah, sometimes that is the case, and sometimes that works out, but sometimes it doesn't. So I think, having spent some time managing different products, possibly in different organizations, just gives you a more well-rounded outlook on, what successful product management can look like and how you can apply different practices such as road mapping or strategizing. And then last but not least, I think it's also be great to know a little bit about at least organizational development and change. Again, I don't know how this is for you, but I find that most organizations these days tend to have some form of product management function, even though there's not always a head of product. There's not always somebody who really manages a group of product people, as a head of product, VP product, director of product, whatever then the specific title might be. And many companies benefit from creating that function or creating that unit. But then the other aspect is that how product management is practiced is not always in an effective way, and often the maturity or the product management maturity is low, and again then that may involve in fostering some form of organizational change. Think about empowering product people to fully own their products and having the authority to make the necessary product decisions. That's not always a given in organizations I work with. So those are the 4 elements that for me make up a product coach, or at least an effective product coach. These are what I would consider building blocks. Geoff, over to you.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with Roman, but I'm going to provide an alternative perspective. So we tend to see what we look for, right? And for me, I tend to come from almost any situation that I find myself in as a coach first and foremost. So when I see people on LinkedIn with the title product coach, I see people exactly as Roman's described. They've got a lot of experience. They can offer a lot of advice. They've been there. They've done it. They can mentor. They can grow. They can support. They can nurture. But I also see some people who actually don't have a huge amount of experience, and instead they come almost agenda free. So as a professional coach, almost as a business coach, as a personal coach, perhaps. So it's not what I think product management should be. It's not the framework that I think you should use. It's not the particular canvas that I like to work with. It's meeting that person, that product person, where that product person is, and helping them craft their own view of product management. I see those people having to have a significant amount of self-awareness to be able to deal with the lack of domain knowledge that you would have in Roman's definition of a product coach. So they don't have the ability to pass on the experience, pass on their knowledge, their learning, their teachings. Instead, they need to focus very much on doing whatever they can to help that person figure out how to become the kind of product person they want to be. And that takes a lot of self-management. That takes a lot of knowing yourself as a coach, to know where your boundaries are, where your limits are, where your triggers are, where your drivers are, where your needs are. And so it's a different aspect of one's characteristics, skill sets, toolbox, personality. And then I would couple that with probably something I would say as close to domain knowledge as I would probably get, which is knowledge of where that person, the world that they're operating in, not the detailed knowledge, but the systems that those people are in, so that they can help them think of the bigger picture. They can help them notice when perhaps they are being too narrow or tactical or specific, not because they know that there is a right bigger picture, but that they know there is a bigger picture. So them being successful at the expense of other critical parts in the system doesn't serve them as a coaching client, as a product person that I'm coaching. So that idea of systems thinking, even if you don't know the system, an interest and a passion and a curiosity for finding out about the system or systems that they're operating within. And then I would sprinkle in some product management awareness. I wouldn't say necessarily experience or knowledge or expertise, but I would sprinkle in a little bit of awareness. So I don't have enough knowledge that I can put forward my views, but I have an appreciation. So when they're talking about certain things, it means something to me. It's not a completely foreign language, but I don't know enough to have formed my own solid views. So that's how I tend to look at things from a product coach. And to try and make things a little bit simple, we've used this term coach of product people to illustrate the two different angles that we're looking at this from. And while we were talking, Roman and I, we started thinking about how these facets might interact. And Roman came up with a bit of a metaphor, which he's going to talk you through now.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had those building blocks, those 4 building blocks, and you know, it seemed that you could put them together so that, you know, they'd form a house. And for me, going back to my take on, you know, what is a product coach, the basis really for being an effective product coach or being a capable product coach is to have sufficient hands-on product experience. And as I said before, ideally, that means having worked on a product, managed a product yourself, ideally several products, ideally in more than one organization. And then building on that, we've got 3 pillars: the product management skills. So, you know, that's the specific expertise, product management expertise that I've mentioned. But then also the coaching skills, the ability to empathize with a client, the ability to actively listening to the individual, and understanding their perspective, understanding their needs, understanding, you know, how they're feeling, and then the organizational change aspects that I've mentioned. And then finally, that's topped off with the industry and company knowledge, which, you know, I think I would argue is desirable, but probably not as important, as fundamental as the base and the pillars. So that's my view. Geoff, what's yours?
So you're going to talk us about your balance there. So we looked at these pillars, but we don't necessarily need to be perfect in all of these areas, right?
That's right.
So what we've shown there is Roman's view of what would be required to be capable. So looking at these different aspects of the house and how much of that we would need to be capable. It's all subjective and it's all open to debate, but I think it's an interesting starting point, and there's room for growth in all of those. So I took Roman's analogy of the house. Is it an analogy or a metaphor? Maybe both, I don't know. But then plugged in my different viewpoints of the key skills. So instead of building on that baseline of hands-on product experience, I was thinking that we would be building on some professional coaching skills as our foundations. And I've seen something in the chat that I'm just going to pick out when Samantha says, I think this feels a bit like coaching versus agile coaching. I'm going to say, hold on to that thought for a minute, Samantha. So building on top of those professional coaching skills, I think we've got some slightly different things. So instead of product management skills, as I say, I'm talking about product management awareness. So I'm aware about what's going on. And maybe I've got a little bit of hands-on product experience, but I'm stronger in my emotional intelligence, my self-awareness, my self-management, those I think what Roman would call coaching skills in his middle pillar there, and then topped off with a little bit of systems thinking. And again, that balance of skills, I think, would be something that I would look for in terms of being capable. If I wanted to step into the role of a product coach as I see it, then that's the kind of spread of skills that I would be looking for before I would feel capable to take this forward. Not an expert, but capable. Anything to add on that one, Roman?
No, I think you've explained it really well. I mean, I noticed that somebody kindly posted in the chat what Chat GPT says about the role of the product coach. And I think what that shows is that coach is just, and I guess also the different perspectives that we're trying to share here is that coach is a very ambiguous term, and it's that's also true for the compound noun product coach. Some people think of a coach as somebody who trains, somebody think of it as a mentor, somebody think of it more as a business coach who helps you fulfill your professional and maybe to a certain extent like a life coach, your personal goals. So for me, when I think about the product coach and when I think about here the left part of this, the left image, the left part of the slide, I think about an enabler. I don't think about somebody who tells people how to build a product strategy or tells them how to prioritize their product backlog, but somebody who helps people improve in their role, and somebody who helps those individuals, other individuals, clients grow professionally. That might mean if it's needed a little bit of hand-holding and mentoring, but I wouldn't see that as the primary role of a product coach. I mean, that would be for me then probably more a trainer or mentor, but then a coach. But yeah, just thought I'd share that to disambiguate slightly.
There was a question about from Frederick, and I just want to get some confirmation, Frederick, if you're there. You ask, what did you mean by this? How does coach of X differ from a coach of Y? Could you elaborate, and maybe we can get an answer from Geoff or Roman for you?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, what I recognize in the picture is that it are competencies as a coach for a coach. Yeah, so from that, you take a coaching perspective, and you could either be coaching a product owner, or you could be coaching a scrum master, or you could be coaching a team. So you have a different client. But so I was wondering, what is then really the difference between product coach and mentor for other people?
I think it's a good question. Did you want to take that, Roman?
I think we might be able to cover that in a couple of slides time.
Cool.
Let me talk at least the difference between what we see as the difference between, or some of the differences between agile coach and product coach. I mean, for me, a product coach really focuses on product people, is focused on product people. That might be product owners, or it might be product managers, it might be people who have other product roles, it might be a head of product. So it includes, line managers, people managers also in that target group. So somebody who's really, really focused on product management, product people. Product people is probably the right term.
I think so. And I think if you're going to take that top job title, that role, and call yourself a product coach, then you're effectively positioning yourself in a niche. And that's great. If I was to call label my niche, it would probably be something like agile leadership coach, which is not as niche as product coach. But it stops me from perhaps calling myself a sports coach, maybe. So I can narrow down my focus and be really clear to people, where the type of people that I'm looking to coach, and who I have a background in coaching, and who I have a passion for coaching. But on here we are focusing on coaching X as opposed to coaching Y. So I'm not putting on here coach of architects. Doesn't mean I couldn't coach an architect, but I'm not calling myself an architect coach, and I don't have architecture awareness. But the point there, I think, is the more that you step back, the broader you can be, which has its advantages, but also has advantages of being more niche. So as Roman says, we're going to look a little bit about, quite a lot of people on this call are probably agile coaches more than product coaches, and what the journey might be. But first of all, why are we even bothering to talk about this, Roman? I've got much better things to be doing with my time. No offense.
Have you, Geoff?
No, I haven't.
So yeah, how come there seems to be quite a bit of interest in product coaches at the moment, or maybe working as a product coach? Well, I think one explanation is that product management as a profession has significantly grown over the past 5 to 10 years, at least from my perspective. The whole market, so to speak, has grown, and with it, in addition to more people joining the profession itself has changed, I think, significantly. Think about things like Agile, agile frameworks that have changed product management. Product management used to be way less collaborative, I'd argue, way less iterative before the advent of agile methodologies. Think about design thinking and a strong user orientation. Think about things like business modeling and recognizing the importance of visualizing business models and identifying, clearly calling out the business model that you use in order to monetize a revenue generating product. Those are just some examples of approaches that have, I think, significantly influenced product management. And if you take the two together, the growth and then the changes, then it explains why product management is in the situation it's in. And from my perspective, maybe I'm being too negative and you might disagree, that's perfectly okay. But I think, overall, the maturity of the profession is comparatively low. I mean, at least, if I compare it to other disciplines like, say, sales or software development, you look at product management education that's been historically rather fragmented, and I think it's become so even more in recent years. I mean, there's an increasing number of competing certifications out there for product people. And there's no clear learning path. You can't go to university and study product management. I believe there's one university in the US that offers product management as a joint course between, is it the software development engineering faculty and the business faculty? But otherwise, they're all post-grad courses. Or add-on qualifications if you look at universities. And in a way, you could say something similar about the agile space. Agile has grown significantly. At the same time, the market probably has become more competitive, and the services that people provide seem to be more differentiated. I mean, when Geoff and I started out, you do Scrum and you do anything Scrum, right? From agile transformations to teaching product people to working with the development team to coaching Scrum Masters. It was all just one thing. Today, people tend to specialize much more. And so I think there's a need, to a certain extent, at least, for product people to receive help, receive some coaching, and there's an opportunity for other coaches to move into that space and differentiate themselves or progress their careers. And I do think that's contributed to the interest.
Hmm.
So
I've got, sorry, Geoff, there's a question. Joshua Fryer asks or suggests, so we all know the X-Wing model developed by Lisa Atkins. And Joshua, you say that could it be that we modify the X-Wing and you've got transformation mastery, business mastery, and a specialty niche? Could product mastery fit into the X-Wing diagram? Or would you see it fitting in elsewhere?
I think it could. I think your particular niche could fit into that, the domain area. I think Roman's right. The more specialism, and just as product management has grown a lot and potentially hasn't matured as much as it's grown, I think Agile has. I think Agile coaching has done the same. I think coaching has done the same. But you see a lot of people with the job Agile coach, and they do very, very different things, and they have very, very different skill sets, very different areas of passion, very different areas of interest. So that X-Wing model, I think, is a really great guide, just like the Agile coaching growth wheel and all these things that are coming out, to give us this balanced view of different stances and different facets to the role. And yeah, I think more and more people you'll find in the coming years will be specializing into particular niches, whether that be development team coaches, whether that be DevOps coaches, whether they be product coaches, whether they be change coaches, whatever the different facet that they have. And it's easier to drill down into your area of expertise once you've got that solid base of skills underneath you. Thanks for the question, Joshua. So we were talking, who might be interested in this new potential career? And we thought of, there may be four. Well, there are probably more, but we thought of four. So the first one is those of you that find yourself in a particular role who actually have a particular area of interest. And that may well be in mentoring, growing, nurturing product people through passing on experience, through almost pairing perhaps, and training those people up to become better, more fulfilled, more impactful product people. So that could be a coach, that could be a strength. Equally, you could find that actually the more professional side, more professional coaching side of your skill set is your superpower. And you have an interest in product, you're in that area. So why not just dial up that side of your skill set rather than be more hands-on, coach the people who are hands-on perhaps. So it's a way of dialing up your particular areas of interest and skills. Or it could be a career progression thing. You look at the agile world and equally product management, and there isn't a really clear career pathway. The best that you tend to see is junior product manager, senior product manager, VP, head, whatever. And equally with Scrum Masters, junior Scrum Masters, senior Scrum Masters, agile coaches, senior agile coach, whatever. And this could be a way of taking the next step in your career. I'm not talking necessarily financially here, but in terms of impact, in terms of passion, in terms of focus. So if you're looking at where your career is going, this might be something going on. Equally, you may find yourself in a leadership position. And it's quite common these days for leaders to realize, sometimes quicker than others, that it's critical now to be able to dial up their coaching skills to be effective in the leadership space. There's very few situations now where you can rely on seniority as being a guarantee of expertise. It's not that the most senior people in your organization know more than the more junior people. That's not the case. So in order for a leader to be effective, maybe knowledge, maybe experience, maybe hands-on output and achievement has got them there, but it's not going to keep them there. So dialing up their coaching skills, especially if they're in the product space and they want to be more of a leader, then maybe they start looking at expanding their skill set in that direction. Or a complete career change. So we've got people on our we've had people contacting us saying, oh, I'm a teacher at the moment, and I quite like the idea of teaching. I'm quite good at it. I've always had an interest in innovation and entrepreneurship. Perhaps I could bring those skills in and learn some coaching skills or learn some product management skills and get into the world of product management or into the world of agile coaching. And I think we're seeing more and more career shifts. Well, I certainly am, like complete career shifts from completely different disciplines and industries into product management or into agile coaching. Quite often, from a product management perspective, someone's just come up with an idea and they accidentally became an entrepreneur to try and solve a problem that they've personally been facing. Then they need to learn the product management skills. Then they need to bring people on. They need to learn some coaching skills. So it could be a complete career change. And one of those career changes could be from agile coach to product coach.
That's right. Yeah. So, we thought it's fairly, how should I say this? We thought it's kind of fairly obvious, really, for agile people to take an interest in coaching product people, and in a way, that's what happened to me. I mean, I went through that development from looking at myself as an agile coach and agile trainer to focusing more on product management and becoming a product management coach and a product management trainer. And so let's look at some of the things that maybe set those two roles apart, and then some of the similarities. So an agile coach is probably focused on agile practices, principles, values, processes, frameworks, probably focused on coaching developers, educating stakeholders, and should have a deep knowledge, understanding of agile frameworks, agile approaches. Think about Scrum, Kanban, but I've mentioned the values and principles. For me, to really be effective with an agile way of working means establishing and understanding and having the right mindset, not only knowing what Scrum is. And then we have some shared tasks or aspects, I guess, and that is coaching product owners, and that's something that agile coaches, I guess, frequently do. So maybe some enjoy it more, others less, and removing organizational impediments. And that's also something that I've already mentioned when I discussed the product coach role earlier. But then there are probably some other aspects that set the product coach apart from the agile coach. such as a strong focus, and you could say an exclusive focus on product and product management. Yeah, and so for me, again, just to describe my definition, my view of a product coach, it's really somebody who is focused exclusively on product and product management, and wouldn't necessarily engage with other parts of the business. At least that wouldn't be the primary focus. Yeah, and so in addition to coaching product owners, coaching other product roles, other product people, whatever their specific role title might be, including those who lead product management organizations, who manage, line manage, people manage groups of product people, and hence a deep understanding and deep knowledge of product management is, I think, super important. So again, as I said earlier, for me, that's really a foundational building block for a product coach. I think if that isn't sufficiently there, then it'll be difficult really to be an effective product coach. Yeah, and then we thought maybe we can offer a few steps how to transition from A to B, how to become a product coach. And so the first step we thought would be to identify what kind of coach or what kind of product coach you want to be. Is it more the Geoff variant or more my variant? So, what is the specific role you want to move into? So, what's the destination? And then treat yourself as a product, I think, is about understanding, how we can succeed in that role, and, how we could fill this role. So is it within an organization as a regular employee? Is it running your own business? And if so, then, what kind of business model would you follow? How do you market? How do you sell your services? What are the specific product coaching services that you provide? And then how do you get from A to B? And one way that I find helpful is really to look at the skills I currently have as objectively as I can. And you could use this house of product coach model that we've suggested with the different building blocks, and then think about what are the skills that are desirable, and where's the gap? Which skills do I need to acquire, and which skills should I develop, should I deepen? And then invest in the right professional development measures, whatever that might be. That might be attending talks, training courses, e-learning training courses, in-person training courses, reading books, listening to podcasts, watching videos, you name it. But with all the professional development, I think it's important to take good care of ourselves as coaches, and make sure that we're happy and healthy. That we practice sustainable pace. I think it's very difficult to really empathize others and help others grow and develop if we're not looking after ourselves. So another way to, I guess, frame this is to say practice self-leadership, be self-compassionate, and have maybe an increased awareness of how we are and how we're feeling. And this is sort of a Mobius loop, because it's never ending, is it? It doesn't stop. So I think it's good from time to time to take some time out to reflect on, am I still in the right role? And that's independent, of course, of the specific role that we're playing. And then saying, am I doing a good job at playing my role? And, again, then, what are the skills I want to work on now? And then, you start the next iteration.
Yeah, we have a question. It comes again from Frederick, and you might have covered it with this slide, Roman, but Frederick asks, so how about the Scrum Master, and one of their roles is to coach the product owner. Can a Scrum Master then take on that product coach role? Maybe not initially, but taking on the house of the product coach and developing the skills as per suggested by your slide. Could a Scrum Master, I guess, become a product coach?
So is it okay, Geoff, if I say something?
Sure.
I mean, as always, it very much depends on what you do as a Scrum Master. But I mean, my answer would be yes. However, I think as a Scrum Master, my understanding is that I would focus more on processes and agile methods, whereas as a product coach, I still I still need to understand processes, but not so much agile processes and development focused processes. I mean, that's maybe a biased view, but that's my view. I mean, when I look at a framework like Scrum, then for me, it has a development focus, and some of you might disagree. That's okay. And so, then building up the necessary product management expertise and the necessary product management experience. I really do think that it's super helpful to have experience in product management if you want to advise other product people and help them grow professionally, help them become better at their job, better at product management, and help them progress their careers. And somebody asked in the chat about the Marty Kagan article, the article that Marty not too long ago published on the product coach role. And that's one of the things that he recommends, and that's certainly what I would agree with. I mean, I personally think that what we've tried to do is we've tried to share our perspective, but also really tease out the building blocks or the success factors that we feel are helpful to work as a product coach.
I would add to that and say that my specific answer to that question would be a Scrum Master could be a product coach, but they'd be more a product coach on the right-hand side of the screen here than the left-hand side of the screen. I've rarely seen Scrum Masters have enough product management skills, product management experience to be more of the left-hand side of the screen type of product coach. And that's cool. That doesn't make them a better or a worse product coach. It's just a different kind of product coach. And I would suggest that just as if you take Agile out of the equation, I have a coach, I have a mentor and a therapist. I think having different types of support for different parts of your mindset, different parts of your life, I think is very, very useful. Having just a mentor and no coach, for example, is only going to get you so far. Having just a coach and no mentor is only going to get you so far. So yes, I think the Scrum Master can be. And then there was another question from Manton about being a hybrid. I think there's potential for that. Again, I think there will be limiting factors, probably around time. So how much time it actually takes to get hands-on product experience and product management skills and know all that, as well as develop your professional coaching skills. They're two very, very deep disciplines that can swallow up a significant proportion of your career. So spreading yourself across two to be able to jump between one and the other, depending on the job or the client or the team or the company, would be a challenge, as well as having your personal development that Roman talked about, looking after yourself and having time to ride your bike and do all the other nice things that we need to do to make life as balanced as it should be. So
a comment from Matt in the chat says it's often a dance, not a singular or a linear road.
Yes, and so this is where having two people on the presentation helps, because I produced a very linear picture of that career path, and Roman managed to turn it into something a lot more incremental and loopy, which it should be.
Well, that's only because I wrote about a product owner career path earlier this year and received so much stick that I've decided no more linear career path.
Roman, feedback. So what other questions do we have, Deidre?
There was questions. This came up twice actually from Ashlyn. Ashlyn, if I get you right, maybe you can come off mute, and I think that when we looked at the Venn diagram between Agile coach and product coach, could you, I know it's the topic of, not the topic of tonight, but could you expand that into leadership coach and have that the Venn diagram expand into three bubbles there? And Ashlyn, you can elaborate if you.
I was just saying the point that I think there's a focus for a leadership coach. I think that, there are going to be certain areas where there's a need focus. Like I do agree there is a need focus in product coaching, because it's probably where I spend the majority of my time rather now than at team level, because they don't have the same support. The same for leadership coaching, because somebody put up there, there's a course available, Boss Day Coach. I think I've gone through half a dozen of those as an employee. They're not great. It's sort of going, yesterday you used to tell them, now don't tell people anymore. And you can see everybody in the room going, what? But yeah, the point I think there was, I think there is different focuses at different times for coaching, and some people naturally tend towards the leadership. Some people might go towards product, some people go towards team. I think it really is a kind of you self-select into the different areas. So that's really just where the thinking was. It was more of a statement rather than a question.
Nice. Thank you. We did actually start talking about a three-way Venn diagram at one point, didn't we, Roman? And then we decided that
Too hard.
for another day, maybe for the next iteration of the talk, perhaps.
Yeah.
I liked
Yeah.
Roman. I'm going to pick out a question that I saw that I quite like.
Please do.
Helen asked, does a product coach by definition become more accountable for delivery? And it sparked a bit of a discussion in the chat. So what do you think? Does a product coach by definition become more accountable for delivery?
So again, I guess that really depends on our understanding of what a coach is. And mine is, a coach is an enabler. I wouldn't really see as a coach as somebody who actively participates in the value stream, actively makes product decisions, actively, prioritizes the product roadmap or the product backlog, or interacts with development teams, or says, yep, that user story is done, or refines user stories. I mean, for me, a product coach shouldn't do that. A product coach should help product people do a better job at, managing their product and maximizing the value that their products create. And certainly growing professionally, that's the job. So in that sense, a product coach for me is like a scrum master, a support role, an enabler rather than a doer. And I personally, maybe that's just my approach, but that's something that's important for me in my work, and has always been, to draw a line. The delivery decisions and the specific product decisions I make, but they are within my own business for the services and products that my business provides, not plural, singular. But when I work with the clients, then I don't want to tell my clients what to do. I want to help my clients find a way forward. Of course, if they're not, if a client is not in a position that they even realize what a possible pathway might be, then I'll be inclined to make suggestions. But I always try to refrain from telling other people this is what you must do. And so for me personally, a product coach shouldn't really participate in the delivery, or shouldn't really actively make the product decisions, but rather help the product people make those decisions and enable them. So
can I interpret this and see if this sits? So when you're working in your own business, you're more of a product manager because you're making decisions, right, directing things. When you're working with clients, you're taking more of a coaching based approach, and the conversation flowed in the chat into a coach is never accountable for delivery. And when their coaching stance doesn't work because they don't have the knowledge or they know what is available, then one way of avoiding telling them what to do is by giving them options, so that at least they can choose between the options, so they still have agency, or they can at least critique the options. Is that fair?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And again, for me, that's part of the job of a product coach, to understand where somebody's at, where's an individual at, where's a team at, and what's their level of expertise, and what's their level of knowledge, and then help them move forward. And that might mean that as a product coach, I say, okay, I'm now stepping into a trainer role, which for me is different to a coach personally, and I'll run a specific training course for you. But when I work as a product coach with you, then I don't tell you this is the way things are, but I'll help you find options, and I'll advise you on which options might be best suited for you to give to start with, to experiment with. But I don't want to force you down a certain path. But again, some of you might disagree, and as I said, it's all down to what is your definition of what a coach and what a product coach should be.
That's really key for me. So, and this isn't just around product coaches. This is very, very, I think, very important in so many cases. Having that clarity about what people expect of each other in the roles. So when you engage with a client, you will be telling them about the services that you provide, but also how you provide those services, so what they can expect from you. So when they do ask for your advice, or say, tell me what to do, Roman, you say, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not how I work. I told you that when we agreed. That's not a surprise. And I think having that, to what professional coaching would call those contracting discussions, whether that be between a product coach and a product manager and a product owner and a team, whatever it may be, very, very important. The one area I think that it's potentially most difficult to really clarify those boundaries is why I came back to this slide, is the leader as a coach. So if I have leadership responsibility, if I have management authority in the product chain, then it's very difficult for me to take that stance that you put forward of, I'm not going to make decisions, because ultimately authority comes back to me, or accountability comes back to me, or responsibility comes back to me. So it's very difficult to step out of that and into more of a coaching stance. Not impossible, but more difficult. The other situations, I think, with some good, clear discussions, it's a little bit easier. Probably got time for one more question. Deidre, what's your favorite?
Yeah, there was an interesting discussion between Kevin and Paul in the chat. Kevin talks about, yes, an agile coach can be a very broad role. And what there was there again, the Venn diagram came up. Should you specialize as an agile coach? Should you specialize into the more product coach area, or should you remain generic? Is there an opportunity to almost specialize in that overlap that on your Venn diagram? And then Paul mentioned, do you need to specialize? Can you be can you be specialized across both? And then would that mean you're looking more at a socio-technical systems coach, where you're looking at the system? I don't know who wants to take that as comment.
He's come off mute, so he's ready to go. Go on,
Roman?
Well, I think everything's possible for me, but again, that's my approach, and I'm biased. I'm happy to admit that. I would probably favor a more focused approach, because I feel, from a business perspective, that gives you, no matter if you're an employee or if you run your own business, that gives you a clear value proposition of your primary service. This is what you do. This is the specific challenge that you address. And, I was sort of keeping an eye on the chat loosely as well. And, people saying, product coach, and examples of product coaches, two people come to mind. And particularly when it comes to specialization, you may want to check out Teresa Torres. She wrote a book on discovery habits that received quite a bit of attention. I think that was published last year. However, Teresa doesn't market herself as a product coach, even though she is. She markets herself as a discovery coach. And so that's a subset. Discovery is a specific subset of product management practices. I think that's very interesting. And I think, it's been a while since I last had the opportunity to talk to her face to face. But from what I see, she's been pretty successful. Ken Norton would be another high profile example of somebody who's been working as a product coach for many years. But I mean, then Ken has a background in Google, and he had a great standing in the product management community before he started coaching. So again, maybe somebody to check out, Ken Norton, prominent figure in the product management world, and particularly, sort of a well-known product coach. But yeah, I'd go for specialization. And even if that means that you say, like, I coach or advise on organizational development and change. But Geoff, what do you think?
Well, I while you were talking, I was trying to think of something really, really clever. And I'm not really, really clever, so I failed. But what I was thinking was to try and then provide a slight alternative viewpoint, just for the sake of being contrary. And I say that when you look at some of the most successful organizations, are they ones that have specialized, or are they ones that have generalized? And you look at Amazon, they do everything. But they started off with one thing, and they did that really, really well. You look at Uber. I'm not saying they're one of the most successful companies, but they're still quite niche, but they're less niche than they used to be. So I think if you can start and get very, very good at something, those, what you go around that conscious incompetence through to unconscious competence mode. Some of those skills become second nature because you've done them so well for so long. You can then expand. But I think if you start too broad, then you fall flat. And I think that's the classic dilemma of all product people out there, isn't it? You want something that appeals to everybody, but to appeal to everybody, you've got to nail a niche. Cool. I think that's a nice way to finish it. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you, Deidre, for your facilitation. Thank you to everybody else for coming along. And we'll have the recording up as quickly as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget to come along next month for Francesco's fantastic session on thinking visually.
Yes, there was some great exchange of resources in the chat, links to books, videos, podcasts. If you find that interesting, you can download the meeting chat. You can only do that now while the call is live. The 3 buttons at the bottom of the chat, click on that and then save the meeting chat so that you can keep all those lovely resources for your continuous learning. Thank you all for joining.
Right. Have a great rest of the day or night or tomorrow or whatever you want.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. Bye.